I was like, this is what D&D, this is what everybody likes so much. Being yelled at and bookkeeping, that's not what it is at all. Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week on Wednesday. In this video, I want to go over 7 tips for players that are generally new to D&D or other tabletop RPGs. So the first tip that I'm going to share is communication. I talked about this in my DM video as well, but communication is the lifeblood of a tabletop RPG. So much of this game comes down to interacting and talking and just like the expectations that everyone has for what the game is going to look like. So you really need to feel comfortable talking to each other at the table. This is really, a lot of this happens or starts to happen at a session 0, but just in general. If you're not comfortable talking to your DM or talking to your other players, then you may need to find another table, or you might need to be the one to open the door for that kind of communication to talk about it. Number 2, and this is specifically when it comes to creating a character. One of the things that I think helps role-playing a character is having a particular character voice or a quirk.
Excuse me, whichever one you are, the dwarf, there's a cane here to look at.
Oh, I'll check it out.
No, that won't do. No, the mouth words that you just made there can't be a sound I'm
How come you can have a voice
I
like
have
that?
to sit next to you.
I think that having something that separates yourself from your character can really help. It helps the rest of the players at the table know who's making the comment, and it can help you put yourself into a different headspace. It doesn't need to be a silly character voice. It can be a manner of speaking. Your character might speak a lot more slowly and thoughtfully than you do. Your character might be a little bit more hyper. I'm going to be honest. I am terrible with character voices. I'm terrible with accents. As a matter of fact, I pick up the accents of my players. It's awful and I get made fun of for it by my players all the time. But having something that you can lean into to make yourself feel like your character, it's very helpful, especially for more role-play centered games. Tip number 3 I have for new players is when it comes to character creation, other than character voice and a character quirk, I think it's very valuable, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having an archetype or idea that you are basing your character on. For example, one of my wife's characters in our current campaign, as a matter of fact, kind of all of our characters in our current campaign, are based off of characters from Greek mythology or like adjacent to Greek mythology. So my wife's character is kind of like Meg from Disney's Hercules. One of our friends is kind of playing Hercules. There is nothing wrong with seeing a character that you like and there's something that draws you to that character and wanting to embody them in a tabletop RPG experience. I think that should be embraced in a lot of ways. Now, obviously, you need to recognize where the limitations are of a tabletop RPG system and your kind of fantasy for what your character could be able to do. But at the very least, it gives you a springboard for personality traits and goals and bonds, ideals, and flaws. So I think that it's a really good idea, especially if it can be really overwhelming. I don't know what I want to be. I have the whole world in front of me and I'm just supposed to come up with someone. It doesn't always need to be from scratch. You can use media that you are interested in to inspire you. I'm going to give you a little secret. Your DM is doing it all the time. I am so lucky that my players regularly don't play Magic the Gathering because so much of the content and names and stuff that I borrow and steal from is Magic properties. And I think DMs shouldn't be the only one able to do that. Players can do that as well. For number 4, if you're not having fun playing your character that you rolled for a particular game, this kind of goes back to point number 1 about communication, but talk to your DM and talk to the other players. Maybe you just need to roll a new character. This has happened with my play group multiple times. There is nothing. One of the big benefits about D&D is that you are not set in the character that you pick. You are not stuck in that life. Maybe this would involve multi-classing into a different direction. Or maybe that character walks off stage and you just start playing a new one. In one of my early games of 5th edition, I had a player who was playing a druid and he really enjoyed it for the first couple of levels. And then after, our 5th or 6th game, he pulled me aside afterward and he's like, I'm not really feeling it. I just feel like I kind of do the same stuff and it just wasn't his style of play. He's like, there's this NPC that's kind of like a paladin, this tanky type character. could I try playing that character instead? I'm all for it, man. That sounds awesome. So he just switched his character out. I created a character sheet for that character that was formerly an NPC, and my friend just took it over. And he had so much more fun playing that character because it was more in his wheelhouse. Some players like to play characters that are in their wheelhouse. They want to always play like a tanky healer, or they want to play a sneaky type character. Other players may have a preference, but they like to push beyond that. My wife is an example of this. She likes to play like in video games and things like that. She prefers to play characters that rush into combat. When we're playing D&D, she intentionally forces herself to experience something new. These are all individual choices, but that's the beauty of D&D. Don't feel tied to your choice. And in a conversation with the DM, you could even realize, oh, maybe I could just play this differently, or multi-class, like I mentioned before. There are a lot of options for how to handle this, and don't feel too stuck. If you feel stuck and you start to not have fun, it's just not worth it. For tip number 5, and this is a tip that anyone can benefit from, learn how to share the spotlight. Especially with characters that have high charisma scores, but even just for players who are more accustomed to talking, and I'm guilty of this. You need to learn when it's your time to shine and when you can fade into the background. It's hard. Like, this is a very, very hard skill to master, but I think it's like phenomenally important. It's difficult because every human has a different filter for when they feel comfortable interacting. And D&D is such a complex game that some people might hit that point where they're like, all right, well, we're aimless. This is silent. This is awkward. The DM wants us to do something. I'm going to go talk to the barkeep. But if they waited 5 seconds longer or 10 seconds longer, maybe someone else would have decided to do that. And the same thing is true with bigger story beats as well. It's not easy, but you should be empathetic to the needs of your table, even when you're a player. And you should understand, hey, the last couple games have been about my character and my secret or my backstory or my goal. Hey, what would you like to do? Is there something your character wants to achieve or anything like that? It's hard because you don't want to put another player on the spot, but you want to give them the opportunity to take up that spotlight. And that's not only the DM's job. Number 6, stay engaged. I think a big thing about D&D is that it's easy to be engaged in what you are doing, and it can be a little bit kind of aimless or taxing to stay on top of it for everyone else. Now, I know that there are a lot of complaints online about people being on their phones too much and things like that. I am not in the business of micromanaging my players. There's a sense of mutual respect at my table, but I also play with friends that I have had for years. So it's a little bit easier for me to say that. I think it is a bit of a bother when combat is coming around and a player starts their role in combat and is disengaged, because it doesn't just affect the DM or that player, it affects the entire flow of the situation. If you stay engaged and you know what's going on and you know what your other party members are doing, then everyone is going to have more fun of a time. Tip number 7 is that no D&D is better than bad D&D. I am ashamed to say this, and it pains me to, I guess, but D&D is a game that is inherently vulnerable, or it makes you inherently vulnerable. And that takes a lot. Some playgroups play it differently, and you need to find the group that works the best for you. But there are so many horror stories of people trying to fit into a specific table or play a way that doesn't fit for their character or themselves as a person. And those things are not okay. And it's better to just bow out and be like, you guys are having a great time, but I really want to find a table that's more combat oriented and less about the role playing. Or I want to find the table that's less power gamer and more into like exploration and the creative side of the game. It's okay to not be playing, which obviously sounds a bit ridiculous because I'm recording a video right now about how awesome D&D is. This whole channel is about that. But your bad experiences for D&D can really rob that passion. And I guess I'll close out on a bit of my experience as a player. My first experience ever playing D&D. It was abysmal. I've been a nerd for my entire life. And I played Magic the Gathering. I played other card games. Like, I always thought D&D was just like too nerdy for me. And the first time I played D&D, I think it was like 3rd or 3.5, and I was thrown a character sheet, and I don't remember the narrative. I don't remember the combat. I know we were in some sort of like dungeon, and I think I had a rogue that I was playing. I don't remember what my character did. I don't remember my character's name. I just remember the other people playing getting mad at myself and my best friend because we didn't know what we should do. But we were thrown into this. We were not set up for success in this moment. And it almost turned me off from role-playing games altogether. I was like, this is what D&D, this is what everybody likes so much? Being yelled at and bookkeeping, that's not what it is at all. And bad D&D can cause those kinds of expectations, and it's inherently unfair. It's okay to step aside from a table and find a new one. Find one that works. Playing this game is so rewarding and so much fun, but it should be just that. And if it's not fun, then it's not worth it. I think that applies to a lot in life, actually. Hopefully these tips were valuable for new and old players alike. And as always, be safe. Make smart life choices.